Welcome to the second episode of Shift Happens, an Inspira Counselling Services series. It's a series of live interviews that we are aiming to connect the experts from the field with students and professionals of psychology. And I'm very excited today to have Dr. Hansika Kapoor for this episode, which would be focused on research in psychology, especially in India. And I'm very glad to have her here. So I'm going to maybe try and attempt to just briefly introduce her first, and then I think I will, I will have a lot of questions to understand as to, how you have been in this particular field. Dr. Hansika Kapoor, she has completed her master's in clinical psychology and then PhD from IIT Bombay. After which she has completed her Fulbright Postdoctoral Fellowship, and she's worked with Professor James Kaufman in University of Connecticut. And after which, into 2025, I believe she has received Daniel Berlin Award from the APA Division 10. And she has been involved in varied research on creativity. So I believe the APA award was her early research in creativity. She has been involved in research in cognitions, in individual differences, I believe, and she's published many research articles. And I went through the research articles and titles. I mean, they're vast and they're so interesting, by the way. So I just want to say that first. Thank you for being here and thank you for, agreeing to do this and to connect with our students. So looking forward to it, definitely.
Thanks for having me, Trupti. Looking forward to it.
Great. So I think I'm going to start that first question itself because research is something that very few of us are exposed to. And we also don't know the expanse and the opportunities that are out there available for us. So especially me, if I meet somebody who has been so actively involved in the research, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that you have been working with Prayogshala, with their Department of Psychology. And when I hear that, I think quickly get interested into how did you get into this field of research, especially in psychology?
Wow, that will require a bit of a life history lesson in my personal evolution. But I started working at Prayogshala when I had just finished my bachelor's, honestly, and started out with trying to understand how in the world we can make a career out of research, living and working and having been educated in India. So I think starting out the goal of Monk Prayogshala, and today the goal of Monk Prayogshala is to advance academic research in India and in the social sciences especially. We realized that there wasn't perhaps enough training. Perhaps there wasn't enough world-class researchers that existed in India. There were a lot of researchers of the Indian diaspora who had probably gone to universities abroad. They were working from there and they're doing brilliant work, but there really weren't any um, really standout psychology or social science broadly researchers, and that kind of community was lacking, at least according to us, and that's why we started Prayogshala with that sole endeavor to make sure that we can improve the social science landscape so that we can do very high impact research from India within Indian context with very specific Indian variables that perhaps a researcher even from the West or another part of the East may not really understand or contextualize as much as an Indian researcher. And for me personally, it was primarily because in my bachelor's, I remember signing up for, in my master's, I remember signing up for journal alerts. So whenever there's a new issue out of an academic journal, you get these alerts about the table of contents and you can go and read their abstracts and things like that. And what really peeved me was I didn't see a single Indian sounding name in those journal alerts. And if I did find one, I was really happy, but it turned out they were working somewhere in the United States or somewhere in Europe, etc. So it really irritated me to see that there was such good research happening, but none of it was happening from India. So I think broadly that was the goal. And personally for me, it was to make sure that when future researchers look at journal articles in high impact journals, they find Indian sounding names who actually work in India.
Right. And that's interesting. I think one thing I want to highlight from here, as you're saying, this is not just to kind of fill in the gap or the lecture. I think you are keeping specific purpose and like a aim in your mind to kind of also kind of focus on it as an Indian research, right? So it's kind of trying to showcase that to the outside world as well.
Absolutely. Like some of the projects that we kind of work on are very peculiar to India. So there was a colleague of mine earlier. She's doing her PhD in, I want to say the University of California right now, Aarti. And she and I and another colleague working with her PhD or just having completed her PhD at the University of Reno in the US as well, Sampada. The three of us worked diligently on developing a political ideology scale for India because, in the Indian context, political ideology is very differently conceptualized as compared to the West. And unless you're a social scientist working in India, you wouldn't be able to understand the nuance of a multi-party system versus a two-party system
Yeah,
between the Republicans and Democrats in the
yeah.
US, and about how political ideology in India is deeply intertwined with morality and obedience to hierarchy and purity norms and things like
Mhm.
that. So it's as you said, research that is, let's say, more appealing to a global audience, but we also focus on India specific variables as well.
Sounds interesting. So, may I know? I think very few of us know about Prayogshala as the expanse of it. I mean, we know about it, we've heard about it. Would you like to give us a little bit of a brief as to what you work in? How does that?
Sure. Prayogshala works primarily in three domains. One is the hardcore academic research. So we write the journal articles, we write the book chapters, sometimes write books, volumes, etc. In that academic space to get it all peer reviewed, make sure that none of it is published in predatory journals, things like that. So uphold high standards of academic ethics. And in fact, Prayogshala also has an institutional review board where we've actually reviewed ethical protocols for universities and organizations across the world who want to do research in India. So we're kind of ensuring that the research that other people are also doing in India is upheld to a high
Mm-hmm.
ethical standard. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that we do. The second thing that we do is fundraising and grant writing. So obviously, research needs some funding, even if it's social science research. So we try and seek funding opportunities wherever possible. We are a Section 8 not-for-profit company, so say that there are very specific avenues of funding that we can kind of approach in India. And the third thing that we do is capacity building. So because of the lacunae that you mentioned in terms of research training capacity, we realize that the buck has to stop with us. We can't have newer generations of researchers not know that there are predatory journals or not know that there are predatory conferences or not know how to write an academic journal article that can potentially get published in a high impact journal and things like that. So the research capacity building that we do is through two flagship programs. The 11th annual research seminar is coming up in November this year, where we encourage undergraduate, postgraduate students to come and present their papers in the social sciences. It is discipline agnostic. Anyone who's done any kind of research who would like to present their work in a environment that is not hypercritical of their work, because that's sometimes the experiences that at least I've had at other Indian conferences as well. That's what we welcome. And the other thing is the annual research summer school. This year we finished the 10th year. Next year will be the 11th. And that happens at the end of May every year. So it's a week-long training program from the fundamentals of research right up to you presenting your own research proposal at the end of day 7. So that those are the three primary things that Prayogshala does.
Wow. And I think you have explained it in a brief. I'm sure that under these things, the kind of programs that you're doing are very varied and interesting. I think very few organizations we know are working in academic research and maybe research for social sciences. I think that's
Mhm.
been one of the purposes for you guys, right? So great. And I
Absolutely.
think I would come to that particular part from students' perspective as to what opportunities will be there with Prayogshala. Before
Mhm.
I think I want to bring back the focus a little bit on maybe your own interest in the research. So, would you like to tell us as to where, what are you interested in when it comes to research in psychology, and how did you get, the creativity aspect? As I believe that's the forefront for your research, right?
Yes, absolutely. So my primary areas of research are creativity. Specifically, it is dark creativity,
Mm-hmm.
which is using good ideas to do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
The applications of dark creativity today, you may think of um, intentionally spreading disinformation or intentionally creating disinformation and then spreading it that could actually cause real world harm. The thing about dark creativity is that it's everywhere once you realize that you inherently may have a bias that creativity is only meant to be good. So some of the applications that we've worked on in dark creativity are even things like counterfactual thoughts, anxiety fueled counterfactual thoughts, where you could be self sabotaging yourself, but in a highly creative way, like leading yourself down a counterfactual thinking route, which is very inventive, but very negative, and it's very hurtful to
Right.
yourself. And in other contexts, as I said, misinformation as well as another core area of my work is socio-moral psychology. And as you can see, dark creativity is also related to immorality and immoral behaviors. So that's where that links in. Earlier with my colleagues, as I mentioned, we were heavily focused on political ideology as well. And in more general, it is in the areas of, like, I suppose behavioral science, social
Mm.
psychology are the broad areas that I do research in. At Prayogshala, in fact, I have colleagues in economics as well as sociology. So a lot of our work is interdisciplinary. So we don't focus on only one. I mean, the disciplines are really just artificial boundaries for us. Nearly all of our work is interdisciplinary.
Wow. So you end up then working with each other as a team
Yeah.
and a research that would have implication not just for maybe human mind or psychology, but also from the economics perspective or also from the political perspective. And it seems to be
Absolutely.
right, and it seems to be having application in terms of maybe the wide uh, instances that you would see in the country, right? So it would be applicable for the population and applicable for probably even policy making perspective. So
Oh,
would that
yeah,
also be
absolutely.
interest? Right,
Yes,
correct.
absolutely. I remember writing a quick paper with a colleague from economics, Anirudh, on behavioral policy during COVID-19,
Hmm.
specifically related to how we can develop better social distancing communication for Indians, a Lakshman Rekha principle, so that you don't leave your home and things like
Yeah.
that. So things like that, again, contextualizing it to the Indian context as far as possible. But some of the research that we did do in misinformation is about actually how financially incentivize. Look, we compared whether financial incentives to spot misinformation were
Hmm.
better than social incentives to spot misinformation, and we saw that there really wasn't a difference, which is great because that's also from an economics point of view. Like, you don't have to pay people to be better at spotting misinformation. Maybe you can just give them like likes or more followers or something like that to
Hmm.
make sure that that can get curbed. So, as I said, nearly all of our research is feeding off from other ideas that we get from other disciplines.
And I think, yeah, I mean, the applicability and I think the viability of these topics are very, very interesting because that's going to be applicable for the
Hmm.
coming generations as well, isn't it? Great. So I think you're trying to match not just when we say academic research, it does not necessarily have to be theoretical in this, right? And if these are
Not at all.
very creative ideas and then getting into this would also generate, I think, more funding and maybe more research interest from people. So basically, expanding this and making this much more connected with what would be required for the general population as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, that we encourage that so much
Hmm.
in the summer school with our team. I think our basic assumption is that if you're not interested in the area, you're not going to be able to do a good job of the research. Like, take a topic or think about a topic that you're genuinely interested in. Like, we have a I used to play there used to, or there still is, an augmented reality game called Pokemon Go,
Mhm. Yeah.
that basically allows you to like walk around catching Pokemon. We have a research paper on that. So it doesn't matter. You can do research on anything. Just be interested in it so that you can sustain that interest over a long period of time.
Right, and that's very, very encouraging, I think, to hear that because that we need that encouragement for students to get into research. I think one of the kind of blocks that students may have, or even professionals may have into getting into research, is that there are so many blocks that are there,
Hmm.
and there is a lack of probably funding. We talk about, we say we don't know
Hmm.
about journals that are out there in the field, and who is going to take the submission and what are the requirements for the submission. So
Right.
before we get into the nitty-gritties of all of this, maybe information a little bit,
Hmm.
would like to hear maybe you kind of faced any kind of blocks while getting into this. What were your challenges while working here?
So many, so many. I've gotten papers rejected because the sample of participants that we selected were Indian. I've had papers rejected because yeah, it was very ethnocentric back in, like, I suppose 2015, 16. But even
Mhm.
our political ideology paper, even though we did it on 2000 plus Indians, it's still not been published. It's still a preprint.
Okay.
So we had difficulty publishing that because it wasn't applicable enough to a Western centric audience and things like that. So, oh yeah, you'll get rejected for all types of like funny reasons. One of our papers just recently got rejected because an editor mishandled the paper and did not see the reviewer comments. All of this happens. It happens at any stage of your academic career. I think my general advice would be is if you want to stay in academia, just learn that you're going to fail. Maybe you'll fail on a regular basis. Maybe you'll open up emails saying, "We're
Mhm.
sorry, we couldn't fund your thing," on a daily basis. And sometimes you become so, what do you say? You become so tone deaf to that. If you get a grant or if you actually get a publication, you're like, "Oh, cool, it happened." Like, I wasn't expecting this at all. And it's a very realistic way to kind of approach academia or academic publishing because
Mhm.
it's such a it's such a weirdly incentivized or misincentivized system of academic publication that maybe the time isn't right for your paper. For example, maybe your paper is too early or too late in the game. Maybe maybe the editor had a bad day. Remember, all of the people who are reviewing your work, they're not bots, they're human beings.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously starting out your career and realizing that, oh my God, this is happening to me, and am I not good enough? Is my paper not good enough? Or is my research not good enough? Is niggling thoughts, and I've had those niggling thoughts. Obviously, were like when the same paper gets rejected from 10 different journals, then you start thinking,
Yeah.
have I done something so grievously wrong? And then it
Mhm.
actually gets published in the 11th journal. And then you're like, huh, maybe the system is broken. But that's not to say that you don't keep trying. You obviously do
Yeah.
keep trying.
Yeah.
And I mean, publication it's a very weird game, to be completely honest. Like, we had papers get published on grant funded projects. Like, a project was funded in 2015, and just last or 2 years ago, the paper got published.
Wow.
So it's not that we're not doing other stuff. Obviously, that's the entire point of
Yeah. Yeah.
being able to have like multiple tracks of projects ongoing at different speeds, so that you know that, okay, there's something that's collecting data right now, so I don't need to pay attention to it, and I can start conceptualizing another study, or, oh, okay, I need to do data analysis for another study. And obviously, you can only do that once you're working in a collaborative team. It's not
Mm.
a one person show.
Right.
It can never be, at least
Yeah.
not in academia. So collaborate, and I mean, another important thing is to just remember that after you, like, all of this happens once you build it as a career, research as a career, but starting out, you still have to play the rules, play the game by the rules. You still have to understand how to write a research proposal. You still have to understand the basics of statistics. You still have to understand basics of qualitative research in case you're interested in that. You still have to understand how to write the method section of your article. You
Mm.
still have to understand how to reference properly and stuff like that. It's only after you do all of that is
Mm-hmm.
when you can start breaking the rules a little bit. Is when you can start conceptualizing a little more out of the box and pushing the envelope a little more. So
Mm.
it's not like I haven't in my TY done the Stroop task and done the 9 dot problem and done all of these things in my master's as well. So gone through the entire experimental psych setup. So it's not like I'm a different breed. I've studied right here. I know exactly the systemic flaws of bachelor's and master's programs in Mumbai. But it's only after doing that when you start becoming a professional academic researcher is when you realize that, oh, there are slightly different ways to do these things, and if I tweak this here or if I tweak this there, maybe maybe it'll mean something different, or maybe it'll be more interesting to readers or to me, things like that.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to highlight few things. I think that would be very beneficial for the students and professionals listening to this as well. One, I'm hearing a lot of frustration tolerance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I
Yeah.
started out because I started out obviously with extremely low frustration tolerance in this space, but now you're just used to it. And I don't think it's a function of age. I think it's a function of experience.
Yes, and I know because the kind of frustration that you're talking about and the adversities that you're talking about are like, I mean, the level itself is you are climbing up, I think, a frustration tolerance ladder
Oh yeah,
somehow.
totally. I just recently, I think it was just yesterday, we were working on an idea for a grant. And
Mhm.
sometimes when you submit a grant for like an international organization, you need to take like a membership of that organization to be able to apply for it. So we were like, okay, okay, this is fine, this is normal. Then they said, no, but we have to was a grant in Australia. No, but we have to check whether your degree is equivalent or or like relevant in our context. वो
Mhm.
डिग्री असेस करने के लिए they're charging $1,300.
Wow.
And then I was just like, no, I don't want to submit a grant to you. This is just absurd. I will take my idea somewhere else. So that's the thing. It's really interesting because it's not just the level of frustration tolerance is increasing, it's also the diversity of frustrations that you are faced with.
Yeah, I can hear that. And I think that would naturally happen. I think even at this stage, what you're telling me is that you have to keep doing and practicing that for yourself so that you can get through all of these things. And one good thing you're also saying is that you're not giving up on it. You're persisting with it, remembering that, okay, you can fail at times, or rather, it's not entirely up to you, is what also I'm hearing. A lot of the time, there's
Oh, yeah,
also external
absolutely.
things, right? So
It
keeping
is.
at, yeah.
Absolutely. And you can't think of it as the end of the world. It's not. There are so many invisible factors at play, and I wish someone had told me that before I started, obviously, beating myself down about, oh my God, I'm not good enough. But then you realize that no, it's a systemic thing. It is fundamentally flawed as a system, and yet we persist because I still think that we're still in the we're in the business of creating knowledge, and I
Mhm.
don't take that lightly. Like we get to tell people what is true or what is knowledge, and that's a very um, it's a very weighty task to be to kind of take upon yourself, right? Which is why we still persist.
I was going to come to that as to what helps you persist, but I think you answered that question for me. I think that's going to be the highlight for today. you get to tell people what's knowledge and what are factual information in research. And I think that's been motivating you is what I'm hearing. And that's absolutely great to hear that as well.
Absolutely.
I hope, like, I think this is the purpose, right? Because we want you to speak about this for the students and professionals out there. Like you said, maybe at the beginning of their career. And I have
Mm,
a colleague of mine, like she's working for us, and I hear her in getting interested in research, and I meet students who are interested in the research, and I'm like, hold on. It's just that you don't have much exposure to it and you don't
yeah.
have the information. Don't give up yet. Let's figure it out
Hmm.
kind of a system. So let's
Oh,
see.
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Okay, so going forward, I think since we are talking about the frustration and the difficulties that students might also face with this, I think one thing that you said is that a lot of this happens post masters. So
Hmm.
during masters, you will learn in maybe the basic and the foundation of it, but it seems like, and that's true for even psychotherapy for practice for that matter. It's not just
True.
research. That once you get out of your masters, you have to figure out as to how do you train yourself more in this, how do you get
Hmm.
experienced, and then how do you build a career. And that's a process. It's still not okay. You finish your masters, you start working somewhere, and you start at a specific level where you're done with your career. It's a
Hmm.
process of learning, process of building your. uh, I know you said a little earlier in terms of what your recommendations are for the students which to start and build and get interested in the topic or
Hmm.
the research that you're doing. Are there any more suggestions that you would have for the students who would wish to make this career?
As I said, I think learn the rules first. There's no substitute for um, there's no substitute for learning how to do research correctly. It's a very methodical process. It's a very stepwise process. There's a research proposal, there's a blueprint, there are ways in which you don't change your hypotheses after you've collected data. They learn about research ethics, learn about what is right and what is wrong in a research sense. If you're doing quantitative research, don't think that p less than 0.05 is the be all and end all of your life. It isn't. um, it may be communicated sometimes through supervisors or professors saying that no, but if you've not done this or if you've not got a significant result, then basically your research is worthless. That is not true. Null results are just as important and they're not published enough. um, Acquaint yourself with newer I won't say trends,
Hmm.
newer
Hmm.
processes in research. Acquaint yourself with open science practices, which is basically making sure that you put up your research proposal before you actually do your study so that it's out there in the world. You're not changing your hypotheses, you're not changing anything after you collect your data. Make sure that your data and your code is freely available. Whether you're in qualitative or quantitative learn software. It would have been amazing if AI were there when I had just finished my bachelor's or my master's. It took me 1 week to load data into R in 2012. There was no, I don't think there was R Studio also at that time. Like R is
Hmm.
a computer application for
No, no,
statistics. And I
right.
remember it took me 1 week to load data into R. I just couldn't do it. It was so frustrating. But now, today, ChatGPT can help you code. It can help you understand whether things make sense, etc. So, but just remember that when you're using AI assistants and things like that, you still need to be able to be absolutely sure about what instructions you're giving it because it's an algorithm. It'll just follow instructions and tell you something. But feel free to use it as an assistant, not for writing, but for coding, for example. At least learning the basics of research. It
Hmm.
can be your private tutor, honestly.
Right, right, makes sense. And I think that's a great thing because I think we say that for psychotherapy. Learning the foundation is very, very essential before you start applying it or doing anything with it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Uh, You're right. I am a 2011 pass out, and I remember right now the research area has expanded like anything. Like, so I don't remember even learning maybe 10 to 20% of what is there out there right now. But anybody who is getting into this, I think it's essential, therefore, to know the foundation and the structures before you get into it and
Hmm.
are there, I don't know whether this is an appropriate question or maybe you can answer this within this platform. I don't know, on this platform. Because, the time constraints and everything. But I'm really interested. Let's say if somebody is interested into getting into research, postmasters, of course,
Hmm.
Prayogshala, I know that has summer program is what you mentioned. So you
Hmm.
have the you mentioned 11th Congress, a conference in November.
Uh, yes, it's a seminar for a seminar in the social sciences where if you've done like a dissertation in your undergrad or your postgrad and you want to present it to other researchers in the social sciences, you're very welcome to apply. And it
Great.
actually goes through a peer review process as well, so you get feedback
Hmm.
on your paper.
Great. Absolutely. I think so. Then those are the two programs that I want to highlight from this interview.
Yes.
Are there many more such things where you would advise them to go, okay, for some specific trainings or approaching a specific journals? If you have, I mean, those who are like starting out, maybe are they friendly for freshers or friendly for beginner researchers or maybe organizations where, they could go and work.
So if you're talking about specific to psychology, there's actually a great list of psych labs and departments across the country that I want to say Nikita. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not sure. So there is someone who has put up a great list of labs and departments that you can contact their PIs, the people who run those labs, and check whether there are internship opportunities or anything like that for training in research. At Prayogshala, we also have a research foundations program, which is a 1 month long interaction for just learning the basics of research. There's also a longer term mentorship program which can run from 4 to 6 weeks. And we have had all kinds of mentees in the past. So sometimes a mentee would be someone who wants to do it right, do a research project right from conceptualization through to preparing a manuscript. At other times, we've had mentees come in with a very specific hand holding required for like data analysis, and then through generating the manuscript or maybe editing, helping academic writing or helping give feedback on academic writing, that type of thing. So the mentorship program is a little more flexible in that sense. It's also longer term because you're working with multiple moving parts. And I think that ideally the end goal is to get your manuscript ready for publication. We obviously don't guarantee publication because no one can guarantee publication. But we all obviously help develop a manuscript up until then. So even identifying suitable journals, because there isn't I won't really say like there's a beginner friendly journal ever. That's because good journals are they focus on very specific areas and topics. So it really depends on what research you've done in what domain, and then seeing whether that research can fit into a particular journal. So if you are scoping journals, look for one place to start looking for is look for the journals that you have cited in your paper. So while you're writing your manuscript, see the places that you have cited papers from, and then go and see those journals and see what their submission requirements are or what their scope is or what their aim is, so that you can use that at least as a starting point to figure out what journals you can submit to. And then there are different types of journals as well. Some journals will only publish quantitative stuff, some journals will publish only case studies, some journals will publish only qualitative reports. So you'll have to find the right journal really for the paper.
Right, makes sense. Okay, and that's great understanding that maybe then look out for journals that are, as you said, in those areas rather than looking for what their requirements, because the requirements will still be maybe not stringent, but I mean ethically put down, and there will be
Yeah,
steps that you have to get through to kind of properly publish it, right?
because I mean, the first step is to find the right journal based on topic area.
Right.
So a lot of times if you get desk rejected, which is basically you submit a journal article to a, sorry, you submit a manuscript to a journal, and it comes back to you without peer review. That means it's desk rejected, and oftentimes it's desk rejected because it doesn't fall within the scope of the journal. So you've not had other academics look at your work or peer review it at all because it just wasn't relevant to the journal.
Right. Correct. Makes sense. And I think then what you're saying is that then keep trying maybe with other journals as well. So one at a time, just check if you can
Yes.
submit it to the other
And
journals.
and the thing is that with journal articles, please remember that you can only submit to one journal at a time.
Right.
Which means that it is as I said, it's a long drawn out process. So you have to wait for either a revision or a rejection so that you can submit it to another place.
That makes sense, right? So one at a time, just try out the process. Don't give up on it, and then get through it as much as possible. Great. Okay. So this really helps us understand. Now, I would like to open up the questions for maybe open up the interview for a Q&A. I do have few questions, but let's see if there are any more questions from the participants, and then we'll come back to it maybe with some follow-up questions from my side, right?
Sure.
All right. So people who are there in the session, thank you for being here, first of all. And so far, we have covered quite a bit with Hansika, and I'm really glad to kind of interact on this with her. If anybody has a question, you can either write it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question, and then Hansika can answer that. So there is a question that is coming. Let me read it out for you so that it helps us. Okay, so this is a question from Simran. It felt so encouraging and motivating to hear someone speak so honestly about the realities of academia and the struggles that come with working in research. Listening to their candid perspective made me feel understood and reminded me that these challenges are simply part of the journey. What really struck me was hearing that research can be done on almost any topic. It was such an eye opener. During my master's, the topics I was genuinely passionate about were often dismissed, and that was honestly very demotivating. I even started to doubt my own curiosity and sometimes feeling silly for being interested in certain ideas, kind of self-sabotage without even realizing it. But this conversation made me see the field in a new light and reminding me of its endless possibilities and reignited my excitement to explore ideas without fear, maybe a little fear or limitations. Uh, I'm glad that this helped. Any comments on this, Hansika? What do you think?
Thanks so much, Simran. I think it's unfortunate that some of your ideas may have been dismissed. I'll be totally honest. I have been a visiting faculty at like different places, colleges, etc. Until I kind of paused teaching. But I used to also be like a dissertation supervisor for bachelor's students. And I remember one day there was a student who came up to me and she said, I want to study cancel culture. And I said, 1 minute. How do you define it? How are you going to measure it? How are you going to operationalize it in your study? And that's when that student like backtracked and said, okay, now I need to think a little differently about the same thing that I want to study. Because sometimes, Simran, maybe the feedback that you got wasn't necessarily on your topic, but maybe your mentor didn't know how to mold that topic into something that could be studied. So remember that there could be like millions of terms flying around, etc. That are in vogue or in trend that people want to study. And like I remembered, like there was this, it was cancel culture only for some reason. Like everybody wanted to study it at some point in time, and I was just like, no, like figure out how to measure it, figure out how to define it, and figure out how to operationalize it in this context. And then we eventually got it down to a very specific area within fast fashion or something like that, which was much more like you could do something with it rather than saying that there's this ephemeral concept that I want to study. So, yeah, just remember that anything can be studied. However, you still have to remember, you still have to follow some rules. Like you can't, it can't be it can't be ill-defined, or it can't mean different things in different contexts, etc. It still has to be rooted to like a research idea, I suppose. But yes, I'm really glad that this was encouraging, motivating, etc. Even if nothing comes of it, I'm glad that I'm glad that you feel that way right now. I think Athena asked, is it of any value to have publication in peer-reviewed journals, or should the focus always be Scopus indexed? Um, Athena, I think journals that are Scopus indexed are necessarily peer-reviewed journals. So basically, the entire idea of peer review is that someone in your domain of research looks at your research and reviews it, to point out like flaws, or to point out like oversights, or to say that, hey, maybe you haven't looked at this or haven't looked at that, etc. Or sometimes you'll just be extremely cruel and mean and reject it completely. But the point is that once you identify a legitimate journal, it will be Scopus indexed, it will follow peer review, and it will be very clear about whether it charges article processing fees. So there are some journals who still ask for money for publication, but they're not predatory. And I know that this is difficult to understand or to comprehend, because it took me a really long time to understand this difference as well. But there are some journals that are straight out predatory. Basically, that means that they will not do peer review. They'll say that you can publish your paper by paying like 5,000 rupees. You will get a decision back in 2 weeks or something like that. And they'll have like bogus people on their editorial team and committee and all of that. And their website will like really not be associated with any of the big publishers in that sense, like Taylor and Francis or Wiley or Sage and things like that. Other places, other journals, sometimes charge an open access fee, which means that if you want to make your journal article freely accessible to anyone, then you as the author have to pay money to the journal. Why do we have to do that? Because each of the journal articles that is published is accessible either through subscription or by paying some money. So if you want to make your article free to anyone, the author sometimes has to pay samne se to offset any future profit that the journal would have made. It is an absurd system. I hate it. It doesn't make any sense at all. But this is the way it is. How do we combat it? We combat it by putting up our articles, basically our Word documents for free on sites like ResearchGate or Open Science Framework, where you can upload your research without any paywalls, and you can make it accessible to anyone without any charge or anything. It won't be that fancy PDF or anything. It'll be a Word doc, but at least you don't have to pay to access papers. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Would you like me to read out that? So Afshan has a question. Athena, you can of course give a follow-up question if you have. So she said, Athena's follow-up question is, I meant journals that are not indexed versus indexed journals. And thank you so much for clarifying. It makes sense right now. So I think that helps.
So journals that are not indexed, you should be very, very wary of them in general. One, I think there's a website called SciMago that does it gives out the impact factors for journals. If it's not listed, if the journal is not listed on SciMago, I would be suspicious about that journal. But there are lots of infographics online to figure out how a journal is a predatory journal or not. There's also something called Beale's List, created by librarian Jeffrey Beale, that has a list of predatory journals that you should keep your eye on as well. Yes.
Hansika has given that Beale's list. Yeah, I believe that's the one that you have written in the chat. So you guys can check it out. So that's for checking if they are ethically indexed journals, right? and not predatory
Yes,
journal.
if they're predatory, like basically if they're predatory journal.
Right. Okay. Afshan has a question. Often, while researching or exploring a new topic, it may happen that there's not a lot of research conducted on the topic. How does one navigate the challenge of not having enough articles, literature review from the past to back your idea?
That's a great question. It is, I have faced this personally starting out in dark creativity research as well. In 2012, there were literally like 5 or 6 people doing research in that area. It didn't exist, basically. Um, but one way to identify literature is to find out like adjacent literature. So literature that may not be directly related to the topic at hand, but what it could theoretically be associated with. So even though I don't have any literature on dark creativity, I assumed that, okay, if it's bad things, then maybe it'll be associated with morality. And therefore, that's how you branch out the literature search and obviously look at other relevant keywords. Again, Google Scholar has like it's become way better as it was 10, 12 years ago in terms of suggesting the kinds of keywords um, that you can search for and things like that.
Right. Okay, so look for
I hope
relevant
that answers.
keywords and something around the topic that would match or maybe help you out, shell out, I think, uh, give backing, or maybe I think just connect to the idea or the topic that you are working on.
Yes.
Isn't it? Right. Okay. Vijiti has a question. Can you tell us a little bit more about research presentation in November and how can we apply for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So actually let me find the link if I can. But the research presentation in November is essentially, as I said, the seminar in the social sciences. We're in our 11th year, and the seminar does not have a specific theme, which means that you could be a researcher in psychology, economics, sociology, public policy, gender studies, linguistics, history, geography, anything at all in the social sciences. You will have to register as well as then submit your paper by 18th November is the deadline right now. There all the guidelines for the paper submission and things like that are available on the website. Your paper will undergo peer review by at least 2 to 3 researchers associated with Prayogshala. On the basis of that, papers will be selected for presentation. And obviously, no AI generated content, no plagiarism content, etc. And on the basis of that selection, you would be invited to present your paper at the seminar. I think it's on the 22nd of November in a hybrid mode. So if you're in Mumbai, you can come to our office in Powai. And if not, you can present online as well.
Great. I think that's a great opportunity, by the way. So definitely, Vijiti is also thank you. Thank you so much. Hansika has put up the website link for the seminar, and she's also put up the website link for Mang Prayogshala, as well as, I believe, your email ID over there, so that students can connect with you as well. And I think this is one thing that I really, really find encouraging from you, Hansika. I'm just going to see this, right? Is the approachability that you have. So thank you so much for this. I'm not ending the session.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that thank you for just being, so actively answering the questions. Simran has something to say.
Absolutely.
So she has written, you mentioned that some emerging trends might not yet have operational definitions or validated measurement tools. In such cases, do you think it's better to first work on creating proper tools to measure them, or to start with more exploratory and qualitative work to understand them better? Also, some trusted tools for checking plagiarism.
To answer your first question, I would always go with the qualitative exploratory approach first. I'm not a qualitative researcher. I don't know how to do it at all. I work with great colleagues who are much better than me at it. And in fact, it's actually one of the projects that we're working on right now also requires a qualitative interview based lens first to try and understand whether we can potentially measure it quantitatively or not. So Simran, definitely start qualitative first, and then based on that information, based on those themes, potentially based on the content that you get, then try and see whether you can approach it from a quantitative lens. And in the case of the second, I know GPT-0 has a plagiarism checker. I'm not sure whether it's free. But I can get back to you about free plagiarism checkers. Like there's Authenticate, but I think some universities have access to it. But in case you ever need like help with plagiarism checking, like send me content and I'll check it for you and let you know the percentage or whatever. It won't take a lot of time.
Thank you so much. Um, we're just waiting. Maybe let's see if a few more questions coming because this is creating a lot of discussion and questions. So Athena has, I guess it's never too late for anything. Although I do wish I listened to someone like Hansika when I just began my research journey. Thank you for being so transparent and open about realities of research work. Super helpful. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Athena. I wish I had someone like me also when I started my research.
Right. And then therefore we're going to keep doing these episodes more often. And I think
Thank
somewhere
you.
down the line, I'm not going to, I know that this is, so I'm going to mention this. I myself, I think, approached you 2 years back for the IRB approvals through Inspira Counseling
I
for the
remember
research
that.
that we were going to, and you did help
Yes,
me out quite a bit with it. I'm really grateful for that. So we received, I
I'm
mean,
glad.
you helped me with the process. We got the approval, and
Mhm.
we did sort of like a pilot study, and then we started data collection just recently.
Nice.
So I'm kind of
Oh,
whenever
good.
I'm
Yay.
getting into it, I'm like, I'm not giving it up. And I think this is also again helping me to say, just keep doing
Stick
it
with
as
it.
and when you can. So I think I can relate to what Athena is saying that uh, you can get into it at any given time. So I'm a psychotherapy practitioner, right? So I am not into research. Like I said, I've finished in 2011 and my knowledge is not even 25% about the research that is there. I mean, the research tools or maybe the stats especially, right? The statistics softwares where, I mean, we didn't have training in that. But I do have now two, students working with me right now, or rather professionals. They've just finished their masters, and
Mhm.
they have been working with me. And we said that okay, we are going to get to it. We are going to do it. So with their
That's
help,
awesome.
I'm hoping that I'll get through that as well, and we'll put out that research as well sometime. So yes, I think we can start it from anywhere. And you encouraged, by the way, when you were part of the REBT conference. And we asked this question about can we do research in psychotherapy and can professionals get into it? And I think you said yes, definitely. Why not? As long
Absolutely.
as you follow the process and you follow the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're
Yep.
doing it, then you can get into it. And I think that's
Yes.
what encouraged me. I was like, oh, I'm going to do it, even if I'm a professional. And I left the research side quite some time back, getting into it again right now. So thank you so much for that. Afshan has, I believe, a question. So when considering a career in research, is quantitative given preference over qualitative? And is it possible to be a researcher specifically in qualitative studies? Hello, can you hear me? Did I drop?
Hi, am I audible?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah, I
sorry.
think,
I
yeah.
think that was my network. So there was
Oh,
a
no
drop.
problem.
Yeah.
So I was reading out Akshan's question, and no, it is not a given. I know that this is it's a bit daunting for a lot of undergrads in the social sciences. So whether it's economics, whether it's psychology or sociology, it doesn't have to be only quantitative. You can be a purely qualitative researcher even in psychology. A lot of times now, as I said, in case like I don't have a lot of qualitative proficiencies, but say for instance, I want to do a study with a qualitative component and a quantitative component, I will collaborate with someone who is proficient in qualitative methods. And that those kinds of studies are mixed methods, so you have a qualitative and a quantitative side to things. But no, it is definitely not a given that everything has to be quantified in psychology. psychology. So yes, you can be a researcher specifically applying qualitative methodologies. And in fact, there's a lot of um, a lot of industries that actually rely on it a lot. Like say, for instance, market research does a lot of focus group discussions and interviews and in-depth interviews and things like that. So yes, you can completely be a qualitative researcher.
That's really helpful. I think sometimes that confusion does happen because in psychotherapy, a lot of time we do want to get into more qualitative than quantified
Right.
exactly certain things. But then we meet that struggle of quantifying something and then finding the right tools to measure something. So we're like,
Right.
okay, do we do qualitative or the quantify something is quantitative?
Hmm.
And sometimes I believe that when you see the research articles, sometimes quantifying something and quantitatively proving something seems much more preferable than getting into qualitative. And I think qualitative, as you said, is also has different parameters itself, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
understanding.
absolutely. And it will also depend on the kind of journal that you're going for. As I said, there are some that will actually only study, that will publish only case studies, qualitative case studies. There are other journals that will be more amenable to like mixed methods research or only qualitative psychotherapy based research and things like that. So I think it really depends on finding the right avenue for the paper.
Right. And I think this is where I want to also bring this to in conclusion. I think few things that you're saying is that ultimately, but the foundation is going to be whether you're doing it ethically and properly. And I think rules are going to be there on both the sides. Even if there are stringent rules, rules need to be followed, and then you need to follow the process. But that doesn't mean there are limitations in this field. That doesn't mean that you cannot do a certain kind of research or that you cannot approach a journal or if you're working on a certain topic, you have only work on specific topics. I don't, what you're trying to say is that there are no limitations on what you can approach, just do it properly and then there are avenues out there and there are journals out there that you can approach. If you
Absolutely.
work with the frustration, if you accept the process and get through it, I think that's encouraging to see that you will get somewhere. It's not that you just, oh, you shut
Yeah.
down this one and then get into this one.
A-
That's not really
And
necessary.
I think, considering that I do work with economists and sociologists, I think psychologists, for everything that we are, we're decent human beings. So when you write to a journal editor and ask, like, hey, do you think this article, I've written this manuscript on a certain topic, do you think it'll be relevant for the journal? Should I submit? I just wanted to check in with you before I actually go through the entire submission process. 9 times out of 10, they'll actually reply. So, like, take advantage of like sending out these cold emails, but never send out cold emails without an ask. Always ask for an input or say that this is what I've done, this is where I need your feedback. So don't say that, okay, tell me what to do. No one's going to respond to that kind of email. But if you tell them, I have done this, and now I just want your feedback on like this little bit, and this works with this works across the board. It will work with like potential collaborators, it will work with potential supervisors if you want to do like a higher education degree or whatever it is. Always put forth what you've done, and then ask them for some feedback or ask them for how you can take it forward.
Right. Great. Um, I think that these pointers are really, really great, and I'm kind of hoping that we'll reach out to more students and professionals. Somewhere down the line, we're also hoping to call you maybe for sort of like a guest lecture. So maybe more theoretical from a theoretical perspective, not maybe
Mhm.
just like this instruction. You've already
Sure.
given a lot in this interaction itself, and I want to keep asking you questions and hearing from you more about this. But I think we have reached
At
the
time.
end of the session, unfortunately. So
Mhm.
I would really, really like to thank you on behalf of Inspira Counseling Services for taking up this session for us. And we will reach out to you in terms of connecting with you for further programs as well. So would like to see
Sure.
you often. And as you see, a lot of my students and professionals are very interested in this. And you being so approachable and interactive and giving us this information definitely is helping them. So thank you for being here. Athena has also said thank you. Thank you so much, Athena.
Sure.
Well,
Thanks so much for having me, Tripti, and I hope that this was useful for whoever is watching and listening.
yes, definitely, definitely. I I cannot. So I don't want to say last words for today's session, maybe would connect
Last
with
words
you.
for today's session. Staying in academia takes resilience, but it's very worth it.
I think that beautifully summarizes what we're trying to get through to our participants. So